guys, and welcome to Skydancer Day 2025. I'm George and I am absolutely buzzing to be able to spend the next 80 minutes with you discussing ecology and conservation, sharing our love of nature and of course the inspiring people who are working so hard to protect them. And I'm also joined by the lovely Lauren today as well.
Thank you, George. Very happy to be here. It's such a pleasure to have you all with us. And as George has said, we're here to celebrate the extraordinary wildlife of the uplands. We're also here to talk about some of the threats that this wildlife is facing, you know, the birds, the ecosystems and the landscapes that we're in. We're also here to shine a light on the amazing work that's being done to restore and protect these landscapes. So what have we got coming up today?
Well, we've got a pretty exciting show for you guys today. We've got peregrines, dormice, wildlife crime, sniffing dogs, rewilding projects, photography, writing competitions, and of course, hen harriers.
It's a lot. It's going to be a good programme. But before we dive into today's programme, let's take a moment to appreciate where we are today. So we are in the gorgeous Malham Cove in the heart of the Yorkshire Dales. And I know, George, you went for a walk around here yesterday.
I certainly did. I went for a lovely stroll in the sun yesterday. I went up Goresdale Scar, which is this beautiful narrow gorge that's kind of formed through glacial meltwater, collapsing caves to make this really impressive canyon. It was so cool, honestly. And then I went up to Malham Tarn, which is one of the only upland alkaline lakes in Europe, which was also very cool.
Amazing.
Back over to the lovely Malham Cove, where I got treated by a lovely sighting of a peregrine. And I also got some wheatears, skylark, and of course some meadowpipits, which was pretty cool.
A successful walk that was.
It really was. But why have we chosen this site in particular? Well, this place is amazing for ecology. It's a really sort of niche area. And why is that? Well, actually, it's because of what's beneath our feet. These really thick beds of limestone that you get in this part of the world. You'll have also seen, you know, the limestone karst pavements, those, you know, really otherworldly shapes. They're so cool to see, which was actually the filming location of Harry Potter, which is also very cool. And as a result of these sort of limestone crags, you get perfect nesting habitat for the peregrines, which are just up the road over there. And also as they dissolve in the rainwater, because limestone is slightly alkaline, it reacts with the acid rainfall, dissolves into the rivers, which actually makes them slightly alkaline too, which therefore then makes a sort of niche habitat for other species. But someone who can tell us a lot more about this is coming up is David Butterworth, CEO of the Yorkshire Dales National Park, who's going to tell us a little bit more information about this site and the wider Yorkshire Dales.
Well, the Yorkshire Dales was designated in 1954. We celebrated our 70th anniversary late last year at an event in Malham, wonderful event. And it was also the 75th anniversary of the legislation that created national parks, that landmark legislation passed by the Attlee post-war government in 1949, the national parks and access to the countryside. So that's the genesis for the national park movement. 10 created then within 8 years of that act. A number of national parks have come along since then. Scotland had its first 2 national parks at the beginning of this century, and hopefully it might have another one on the way. And then the South East got national parks, South East of England, in the early 2000s as well, with the New Forest and the South Downs. But of course the Yorkshire Dales remains the preeminent national park in the UK. Well, there are 3 big challenges facing the Yorkshire Dales National Park, as there are all the national parks in the United Kingdom, and they're in relation to climate and what we can do in relation to climate mitigation and adaptation, which is significant in relation to peatland restoration, tree planting and promoting better ways of energy regeneration. The second one is nature recovery. We have an ambition in the Yorkshire Dales to be the home to the finest wildlife in the United Kingdom, and it's not a high bar. I mean, the United Kingdom is a nature depleted country. I use the word deliberately, it's a third world country in terms of its nature, and we're not getting any better about that, so that's an enormous challenge for us. And the third one is just recognising the value of these fantastic landscapes to the public generally, and contributing more to the physical and mental health and well-being of the population. Huge challenges in the health service, which many people will be aware of, and we think we can play a really significant role in improving things there. And I mean, the people who are watching this, they won't get a kind of a big vista of what we're seeing here, but this is an amazing landscape, and it's really, really significant, I think, in terms of people's physical and mental health and well-being. Well, national parks are always a balancing act between the needs of nature, the needs of local communities, increasingly what we're doing in relation to climate and what we can do for the country's health and well-being. But I suppose my hope for the nature, and maybe it's because I'm now a grandparent, I know you wouldn't believe it, would you, looking at this, but I'm a grandparent, is that my generation, and the one that's following it in particular, bite the bullet and take the decisions that they need to take to manage these landscapes for climate and for nature. We cannot keep putting off those decisions in the way that previous generations have, because something has come along that's more urgent, whether it's a war in Ukraine or a cost of living crisis. Those are urgent, and I get that. But the really important stuff around climate and nature, it keeps getting shoved to one side, it keeps getting picked up by the next generation, and frankly, that's not good enough. So my hope is that we take responsibility for delivering for future generations in this country. We recognise that the north of England in particular is seen as an absolute black spot for raptor persecution, and that's been the case for some considerable time now. That causes us difficulties on two fronts, really. One is that we're increasingly getting feedback from people who live in the area and people who visit the area that continual problem is causing them to not want to come to the Yorkshire Dales, and that's obviously a problem because that's one of our statutory purposes. The second thing is we aspire to be the home to the finest wildlife in the United Kingdom. There are two things about that. One is that raptors are part of that. So we want to see more breeding harriers, and there's been some success in recent years in that area, albeit controversial. We've worked with some brilliant landowners who've assisted in that, and we want to see an end to persecution, and that's where there has been failure. So the ways in which we've tried to end persecution, which is essentially getting people round a table and saying, look, if we don't get this sorted and get it sorted soon, someone's going to come along and sort it for us, and that might be government, and they might sort that in a way that is not conducive to how people might want to live and work in these areas. But in spite of that threat, I think we've just not made the progress that we need to be making in terms of dealing with persecution. And let me just make this last point, if I can. Setting aside any responsibilities we've got as a national park for trying to be home to the finest wildlife in the United Kingdom, the fact is that bird of prey persecution is a crime. We kind of object to crime. You know, if government ever introduced a law that said before 10 a.m. each day a child had to kill a bird of prey, we wouldn't be happy about that, but it would be the law. And the law at the moment says birds of prey persecution is a crime. So we will call that out, and we would urge people who've got any information about this to call this out as well. It needs to be removed from this area and indeed from this country. It remains a scourge, and we will do all we can in future, working with the police and relevant bodies to play our part in trying to deal with that.
Thanks to David there for that really insightful look into the Yorkshire Dales National Park and the importance of our national parks in general. And he raised a really important point there about the sort of balance that our national parks can really provide between people, the wildlife, and actually the landscape itself. And it really shows that the sort of massive positives that we can achieve from our national parks and that we have actually achieved for such a long time.
It is a long time, isn't it? They're really building up a legacy here on their 70th anniversary. And I thought it was really great to see some of the, specific work, or to hear about some of the specific work that they're being done to make it a better national park for people and wildlife. And that he mentioned that they were planting trees and restoring peatlands, which not only is going to be really beneficial for biodiversity, but also are fantastic carbon sinks, so it's also going to be great for mitigating climate change. And I also thought it was great how ambitious they were being about wanting to become a stronghold for UK wildlife here. And of course that wildlife includes raptors, which should have a place here in the natural order of things. And a key part of that is tackling illegal killing.
It certainly is, and David raised a sort of really quite important point there, that sort of Northern England as a whole and the Yorkshire Dales National Parks, as David put it, are a black hole for raptor persecution. And obviously, it's a pretty sobering thought that these sort of areas are so impacted so brutally by raptor persecution, but it does give us a little bit of hope that our national parks can allow this problem to be addressed, but importantly, kind of addressed in the right way with the community and local people in mind. And this leads us on quite nicely to what can only be described as the feathery jet engine that is peregrine falcons. I mean, they're such cool birds. I had a lovely encounter with one yesterday. I could literally hear it whistling above my head. It was an amazing sighting. And we're really blessed to have them in the UK. And just around Malham as well. They nest just up Malham Cove. But it is also a species that's quite strongly affected by raptor persecution. Very severely under threat from illegal shooting and poisoning. And this is a clip coming up now from Ian Court on the Peregrine Project in Malham and how they're working using community engagement to help this species.
A pair of peregrines first nested at Malham Cove, as far as we're aware, in 1993. Settled on the cove knowing that there's lots of people about, so that original pair were really tolerant of people and disturbance and were happy to settle on a site like this. There are a lot of people, we get lots of people coming to Malham, and one of the things we wanted to do is try and highlight peregrines, the importance of raptors, and just to show people just how special these fantastic birds are. So since 2003, the Yorkshire Dales National Park Authority have teamed up with the RSPB to run a Malham Peregrine project, where we come each year here at the Cove, set some telescopes up. We've got a really dedicated team of volunteers from both organisations, and we show people the birds. And the response we get is absolutely fantastic. We've been doing it 20 years now, and it never wears off. One of the real special things for us, and why we think it's really important, is because we get a lot of people coming to Malham who aren't bird watchers. They might have seen Spring Watch or things like that, but they're not bird watchers. They don't necessarily know the birds are here, and we can show them. And one of the things that's really great when you hear it, when the viewpoint's open, is you can say to people, do you want to see a peregrine? And they can say, well, yeah, okay, then. Oh, wow, look at that, it's fantastic. And, we call it here at the project the wow factor, the Malham wow factor, that it's so great to see people of all ages, young kids, parents, grandparents, all having the same impact when they see the birds and going away saying, you've made my day. It's really great to see these birds. So one of the reasons we want to do this project from the National Park Authority's point of view and working with the RSPB is that we can show people just how special these birds are. And when you've got a site like Malham Cove and a spectacular bird like the peregrine falcon, we really got a chance to show people how special and how important these birds are. So from a peregrine point of view, they want somewhere safe to nest. So one of the few predators for peregrines, natural predators, is ground predators like foxes and stoats. So peregrines like to nest high up on a crag. So you've got a fantastic crag in the background here, Malham Cove. You can't get better than that, where they're safe from these sort of predators. They also like to have a good view out, so they can look for other birds intruding, peregrines or another bird of prey, and also to look out for food. And you cannot get a better place. Perched up here, you've got a spectacular view down the Aire Valley, right across Malham. A high site like this, safe from predators. From a peregrine point of view, this is as good as it gets from a nest site. They'll pair for life, so we don't know how long they might live 5-6 years, something like that. Well, the Malham birds are fairly regular. They'll go down on eggs last few days of March, first few days of April most years, and that seems fairly regular, since we've been monitoring them here. They'll incubate, so the female will sit tight, do most of the incubation. She'll sit tight for 3, 4, 5 hours at a time. Then the male will come in to feed her, so he'll bring food in, he'll call her off the nest. So if you're really lucky when you stood here, you'll hear the peregrine call, you'll see the male flying with food and the female will come out to meet him, and they do this fantastic food pass where the female will fly underneath the male, turn upside down and either take the prey or he'll drop it into her talons. She'll go off and feed, fly around, have a wing stretch. Sometimes it's interesting each year and the different birds. Sometimes occasionally the male will go on and incubate the eggs. We think it seems more likely when they're a well-established pair. Sometimes it doesn't, but the female will very quickly, once she's fed, she'll go back on. Her main role is to do the incubation, and she'll just sit there for another 3-4 hours at a time. So that'll go around about a month, give or take, depending on the situation. So again, at Malham, they go down on eggs last few days of March, first few days of April. That means the chicks will hatch about a month later, so end of April, early May, we'll look for the first signs of the birds having chicks. So one of the things we look for is the female won't feed on the nest when she's got eggs. She'll always fly off and feed away from the nest. From here, the nest is often obscured, so you can't see it, but you're looking for that telltale sign of her taking the food in, and then you know there's at least one chick there that needs to be fed. The chicks will, till fledging, there'll be some differences because the males are smaller than the females, and they will hatch at different times, days apart. So you can have quite a difference in chick size. So if you have a male that's a chick that's hatched first, and then a female that might be the third egg that hatches, and generally speaking, they're a third bigger than the male, so they take a lot longer to actually get to full fledging size. You can have quite a big difference, when the birds are young. But give or take a month, they'll be leaving the nest, they'll start flying around, and that's when you really get some spectacular sights here at the Cove. When the young are learning to fly, they're honing the skills, they're chasing each other, harassing jackdaws, and it is a real spectacular sight to watch them. So what we'll often get is sometimes the young, a bit like us really, some of the young leave straight away, really confident, they'll fly off, to look after themselves. Some are young, are dependent on the parents and really, really reluctant to leave and be here still in August, try to get mum and dad to feed them, look after them. So you get a real difference in each year and depending on the birds. But generally speaking, in the late summer, autumn, the young birds will either drift away themselves or the adults will push them out of the territory to fend for themselves, in the wider countryside, where they'll go out, start looking for their own territories, that hopefully in 2 years' time they'll settle down to breed. The main food supply for peregrines is pigeon-sized birds. They're the ones they'll take, but they are very adaptable. They'll take a whole range of bird species, mainly in flight. So there could be anything starling size, thrushes, blackbirds, anything up to wood pigeon size. Quite a lot of the birds will both from this country and the continent will go on to the estuaries in winter, so they'll hunt shorebirds, waders, or they might go into wetlands to hunt, duck, teal, mallard, something like that. So they've got a real wide range of different prey species. But it's really difficult for the young birds. There's often natural high mortality in their first, once they're kicked out and they're not being fed, it's really, you've got to learn to hunt quickly, otherwise, you won't make it. So naturally, mortality is quite high in the first year for peregrines as they learn these skills. It is difficult. Not every hunt's successful. It can take many, many times to actually catch something. But, this is how nature works. It's the survival of the fittest. They'll make it through the winter into the next year.
Thank you so much to Ian for that fascinating video. It was great to see some insights into that project. And what I especially loved in that video was at the beginning when he was talking about engaging the visitors to the park with, helping them to see peregrines, and having it a sort of connection to nature through, you know, encouraging people who aren't bird watchers already to have a look, has actually some amazing health benefits for ourselves. So I was looking this up, and I found some studies which show that having a connection to nature or a relationship with the natural world through our emotions and our experiences can help us to improve our self-esteem, reduce stress, improve our moods, and even boost our immune system.
Really?
Yeah. So you seeing that peregrine yesterday might, you know, help fight off a cold. Who knows?
Well, I feel the world better anyway. Yeah.
Exactly. Plus, it can also lead to people behaving in a more kind of pro-environmental way. So it has a really nice positive feedback loop there. But I did hear a sad rumour that this nest that we saw in the video has failed.
Yeah, sadly, that is very true. I was chatting to a group monitoring the nest the other day, and they were saying that sadly the chicks that we did see in the film there have later died, which is a bit of a shame. They're not exactly sure why. Could be something to do with the climate. We're not too sure on that. And sadly, another example of how peregrines have been affected this year is with what can only be described as a particularly sadistic stomping of a nest in St Albans. This is currently under investigation, but on a slightly positive note, they have managed to have a second brood, which is really reassuring, isn't it? Unfortunately, the chicks that we've lost at Malham Cove, because of how late it is in the year, are unlikely to have a second brood, which is a bit of a shame, really. But an innovative new way of combating raptor persecution is through wildlife crime sniffing dogs, which is a few words I didn't think I'd put together in the same sentence. And we're very thrilled to welcome DI Mark Harrison to tell us a little bit more about how the investigations will work. So Mark, would you be okay to tell us a little bit sort of about what your role kind of entails?
Yeah, good morning. So I work as part of a small policing unit, and there's only 18 of us in the team, but we cover all of the UK. And our role is to work with all the police forces and a number of partners for all aspects of wildlife crime, and that includes everything from birds of prey through to illegal wildlife trade.
Okay, so it covers quite a few grounds then, not just shooting. Okay, and then I was wondering, sort of in the case of raptors particularly, what would kind of be your sort of step-by-step approach to, you found the corpse of a raptor, you've kind of identified that this has died under unnatural circumstances, how would you then sort of progress to, in the best case scenario, being able to identify an individual or a group of individuals and then leading up to prosecution?
So it obviously varies in relation to different crime scenes. So a lot of the times what will happen is we'll get a notification from somebody that they found something that looks suspicious.
Yeah.
So then for us, it's find out as soon as possible so that we can get up there as quickly as possible and recover the best evidence. And we have to preserve forensic evidence, and we have to make sure that we're not contaminating the scene. So police officers get specific training for that, because obviously there's a lot of evidence there, and we need to be able to link a perpetrator to that victim at that location at that time. So that's what we're working at, that triangle. So what we'll generally tend to do is make sure we get it forensically recovered, take it away, and then there's a lot of work that goes on in the background then.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of agencies that we work with, such as SASA in Scotland or Zoological Society of London, and we'll have post-mortems done. We'll work with Animal Plant Health Agency, and they'll do toxicology reports, and we'll try to find out what's going on. Everything from X-rays through to, there's a lot of work that goes on. And then we'll try to prove it's a crime first.
Yeah, of course.
Then while that's going on, we'll be looking for other passive sources of evidence that might be CCTV, witnesses, other forensic evidence that might be around. And whenever we get something that's suspicious, we'll be looking for what's the threats to the birds in this area. Is it natural causes? Has it hit electric pylons, or is there a threat? And unfortunately, there are some places where there's conflict with the birds, so that might be, so we can then start to suspect that a crime's taking place. And what we have to do is bring all that together with all the expert witnesses, speak to the Crown Prosecution Service, and then try and get a decision made in relation to which way we're going to go. And that might then mean we're doing warrants, we're inviting people in for an interview, we might be arresting people, and then we'll be looking for other evidence then to bring together for the case at court, and hopefully getting a prosecution. It's not easy.
No,
getting the evidence in the first place isn't easy, which is why we've been working with the detection dogs to make sure that we can recover as much evidence as possible. And you know, the burden of proof, we have to be able to prove beyond all reasonable doubt that something's taken place. So you are up against it, and unfortunately it can take a long time. The CPS and the police are under a lot of pressure for other priorities, and we've still got a backlog from COVID.
Of course.
So but everyone's doing the best and trying to get it before the courts, and hopefully we get a prosecution.
Absolutely, and I mean it's really reassuring to know how sort of seriously this is taken, and what the sort of depth of investigation that this goes into, showing that there is care about getting people prosecuted, and that's it's reassuring to know. Really reassuring. And as part of this sort of training, we're going to look now into a small VT, kind of looking into how the dogs themselves are trained and a bit of an overview of how that works.
Oh, brilliant to see that. They're so clever, aren't they, those dogs?
Mind-blowing.
And we are very excited to be joined by two of the team from the show. So we've got Kevin and Jem here. Thanks so much for coming on today and for the video. Yeah, it was great to see the dogs in action on the video. But I really wanted to ask, I saw you putting down some things in the grass to train them on. So what exactly are these dogs trained on to find the wildlife crime?
We've trained them on bird carcass, just general purpose carcass, so not specifically hen harriers, so they'll find any birds. But we've also trained them on the sat tags, which will be on the hen harriers. So if they come off, or if a bird's shot down and stop locating, then the dogs can pick up the sat tag, not just the birds as well.
And so how do they sniff out the satellite tag? Does it have a smell as well? Or?
So yeah, everything on there has got components inside it. It's got a battery, which is solar powered, so it's also got the panels on there, it's got wires, so very similar to what you do with a mobile phone detection dog. It's got similar components, so we just train them the same way as we would anything else.
Wow.
The scent picture is smaller, but it still has an odour, so the dogs can find it.
I wouldn't have thought that, you know, wires and bits of metal had a really strong smell, but sort of ingredients put a picture together for the dogs. Yeah. Super interesting.
It's mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing, the skills and how genetically sort of different they are, that they're able to detect things like that.
Yeah.
It's quite something else. And you sort of briefly mentioned earlier the similarity in training. So are they trained in a similar way to dogs that sniff out drugs, tobacco, things like that?
So when you're getting your dog on a new odour, it will be very similar. And we do, even with our dogs, we do train them in a similar way. So we'll do building searches, car searches, and then eventually we will take them out into the live environment, because they're going to be wildlife dogs, so we need to make sure that they can get used to going through brambles, through water, thistles, anything they're going to encounter in their environment, and that's where it will start to differ from other forms of detection.
Of course.
And it was really interesting to see how you were sort of quartering through the field there. How does that work?
So we'll walk on a transect in a straight line, which is why spaniels are really good as well, because they quarter naturally. So we'll walk in a straight line and the dog will work from right to left, trying to pick up the odour. And obviously a bird's quite smelly, so your dog's got a very good point of detection, probably 100 to 200 metres. He can probably get the odour if the wind direction's right. So yeah, they can pinpoint the birds pretty quickly for them.
So organised.
It really is. It is just fascinating. And I'm also fascinated by how well flavoured they are. Sat there, they're chilled.
I know.
Henry's a different kettle of fish. So we wanted to bring Henry in, but Henry would not sit still. So he would trash the place.
Oh, bless. Well, thanks a lot for coming, guys. It was really, really interesting to hear about this kind of innovative new way of combating raptor persecution. It really is amazing. Now, we're going to go on a little bit about some of the sort of fundraising that's kind of involved for sniffer dogs and things.
Yes, and you know, if you've been inspired by what you've seen on the show today, Hen Harrier Action have launched an appeal to raise enough funds to deploy at least one more wildlife detection dog. So how long exactly does it take to train one of these dogs?
So because we've got dogs on multiple odours anyway, it doesn't take long to train a dog on a new odour. But if we were starting from scratch, it would be 3 to 6 months to get them ready to be deployed. But as Jem's already on other odours, we should be able to get her up and running quite quickly.
Brilliant.
Amazing.
So we're aiming for at least sort of £3,000 to train and deploy an additional dog throughout 2025, which would be absolutely brilliant. So please head to our website and to our links below in the description to make a donation. And every contribution really helps to strengthen our response to illegal activity and help these birds to thrive in this habitat that they should call home.
100%. Well, yeah, thanks again for joining us now, guys. And you'll remember that last year we had the lovely award-winning author Jill Lewis, and we're so grateful that she's back again, joining us via Zoom. Can you hear us there, Jill?
Oh. Hello.
Hello.
Lauren and George. Can you hear me all right?
We certainly
Yes.
can. It's lovely to see you again.
Oh, no, it's really It's the 5th year of the Young Wild Writer competition. Let me know when to go.
All good.
I did, yes. So it's really lovely to be announcing it's the 5th Young Wild Writer competition. It started actually back in lockdown when we were all locked away, when we all felt very isolated. And what that did during lockdown was we wanted people to share their stories, we wanted their people to reach out with each other and connect with each other. And so that's when the Young Wild Writer competition started. And it sort of makes me think about stories and the importance of stories. Because when...
Oh. Oh. Sorry, might have just lost Jill there 1 second. You still there, Jill?
Lost the connection altogether. So you're not on Zoom at all?
No. Video calls can be in going wrong every single time. It worked absolutely fine in our rehearsal. So
it really did.
There we go.
Really
but we'll hopefully come back to Jill. But in the meantime, thank you so much for that introduction, and please do enter the competition. You know, we really need creativity to spread the word for these kind of threats and for how inspiring wildlife can be. When you read a piece of writing, like Jill was saying, you know, it really helps you to see it through a kind of more creative, creative lens, and you know, spark our kind of emotion, get people going. So yeah, please do enter and find all of the details on our website. So now, coming up, we have a fantastic film about a community interest project called Bridestones Rewilded. This film was shot by Greta Santagata, and it's all about the West Yorkshire moors and a dedicated team from the community who are rallying together to get the funds and rewild this beautiful landscape.
Good save. Oh. Sorry, I panicked a bit.
No,
This is
no, she was still up there. I was like,
Bridestones
right, moving
Rewilding
on.
Project 2025.
Oh,
It's nestled between the Walshaw Moor and Todmorden in West Yorkshire. Well, it has got the most amazing stone in West Yorkshire, but also it has an area of blanket bog which we are planning to restore. We are also planning to work with Moors for the Future and Slow the Flow, and we're going to create lots and lots and lots of little dams and bog pools all across the blanket bog area, and this is going to create a perfect habitat for insects, and this in turn will create a good area for breeding birds. During the winter, the farmer put all this hay out in this area, and you can see the whole area now is nothing like a blanket bog at all, but at one point this area would have been. It's going to take a lot of work, but we'll take all the old hay away, and we'll put in some big bog pools, incorporate more sphagnum, and it should be a really good breeding ground for dragonflies especially. Here you can see already that the bilberry here is coming back. The cattle left on the 1st of August, so improvement already. There is some nice bits of cotton grass as well there, that's coming up as well, which is another good sign. Excellent. Land is at a premium and everyone wants to just build on it, and we're going to save this bit so everyone can come up here and enjoy it. We are aiming to raise 350,000 to buy the land, and at the moment we have raised approximately 150,000, and we're getting a loan from a local business, and hopefully we shall be acquiring the land by August this year, 2025, and that's when the hard work starts.
Well, that was a pretty gorgeous film there from Greta, and we're really lucky to say she's with us now. So I was going to ask you a little bit about sort of what was your experience sort of making this film, sort of what challenges did you face?
Well, the Brightstones are very close to my house. I kind of see them a bit as my back garden.
Oh.
It takes half an hour to walk up there, so I love them, and it's just such a beautiful place. Challenges? Oh, I guess it's always windy up there. That was one of the biggest challenges. But yeah, we were actually really lucky on that day. I mean, it was all shot in one day really quickly. I did the interviews in the morning, and then in the evening I got that incredible light. So I can't take credit really for the film. It was the light that did it. When it turned up, it was just like,
heaven.
It's heaven. So beautiful up there.
It's such an otherworldly landscape, isn't it? With the rocks, like you were saying, the light, the cotton grass.
Yeah, with these rocks that look like they've just been plonked there from the skies, and it's just such a beautiful place.
It really is, it really is. And I was sort of wondering, sort of in the film, meeting the community, what did you sort of take away from that? What were some sort of positive experiences that you sort of learnt about through making the film?
So I basically approached these guys, the six guys that live locally to the Brightstones, like myself, and I learned about their crazy project, I have to say. You know, this land was up for sale for a considerable amount of money, and they thought, let's buy it. Let's buy it for the community. Let's do it all together, which has some financial risks, and it's really difficult. So they've had to raise hundreds of thousands of pounds, and they have managed to raise over £100,000 just from the community, just from Totmerton, the town where I live, which is absolutely extraordinary. And then they managed to get a loan. Obviously, they've got to pay back the loan, and they've got 5 years to do that. So they're, always looking to raise more money. And I just really like the idea. I love the fact that they're doing this for the community to protect that land, to rewild it, but also just to make sure that it stays there the way it is, that it's accessible to everybody, that it's not used for anything else other than, for wildlife, for nature, and for people to enjoy. So I just approached them and said, I just like this so much, I want to make a film about it. And yeah, it was wonderful.
Brilliant. I mean, it's so positive to hear that already they've earned so much money. A bit of a way to go yet, but to achieve that amount of money in a fairly short space of time, it's quite incredible, really, isn't it? It really is.
And it already seems to be working a bit. We saw the bilberry and the cotton grass that you mentioned. What was the kind of environment like around there?
Well, they've actually they don't even own the land yet, so they're in the process of buying it, and they should be getting it in the summer. But they've managed to strike a deal with the previous owner, the farmer, to remove cattle. So the cattle hasn't been on the land now for a few months, and that's the first time in a long time that area was used by cattle for grazing. So already in this short time, where the only thing that's changed is the removal of cattle, already you can see the first bilberry bushes. They're still small, but you know, by this time next year there'll be big bushes. Heather is coming back, and and cotton grass. So this is just the start. In fact, it hasn't even started yet, and you can already see positive impact. So it's exciting.
It really is.
It's amazing. Yeah, it's great how these kind of small changes all add up over time to make a difference. And of course, it's not only the land that we need to be restoring here in the UK, but also our aquatic ecosystems. And in terms of our own sort of personal experiences of rewilding restoration, I've been involved a bit with native oyster restoration. So in the seas around the UK, they're restoring a lot of our oyster beds that we've lost through overfishing and disease and climate change and all of that sort of thing. But it's not about just plopping the oysters back in the water. All of these restoration projects are about letting nature recover and do its own thing. So enabling these ecosystems to function as they should be, and not just plopping an oyster and walking away. It takes a lot of time, a lot of dedication, and involving the community in that, and the kind of social, ecological impacts as well are really, really important.
They really are, and I was looking up earlier about some sort of more broader sort of observations around rewilding being a sort of relatively new sort of development, really, and I was kind of seeing what some sort of like positives and negatives maybe of that have arisen. So one that 70% observations made in rewilding projects have actually been positive. There's been 70% of sort of viewable positive changes as a result of rewilding certain spaces. However, there is a sort of gap sometimes in connectivity between sites, that sometimes one site can be amazingly and fantastically rewilded to, peak biodiversity, climax community, but sometimes it can be difficult for these species to transition to other habitats because there might not be the connectivity there, which isn't necessarily a criticism of rewilding, it's more of how we develop rewilding to enable species to therefore cross. But one massive positive is the boosting of native species like bilburn, cotton grass, that have all managed to rebound, particularly in Bridlestone. However, there can sometimes be, as you said, sort of some potential lacks of sort of socio-ecological resistance, which is basically where the kind of interaction, the link between people, the community and the wildlife can sometimes not be as durable. So there are some sort of potential slight, not necessarily criticisms, but rooms of improvement, I suppose, in this. But away from rewilding, and in the words of John Cleese, and now for something completely different, dormice. I couldn't resist. A new conservation initiative is looking into dormice reintroduction in coppiced hazel woodland around the very well-known Azzigarth Falls. I apologise if I've said that a bit wrong. It's actually the set of Robin Hood and the Prince of Thieves. Not that that's relevant, but here to tell us more about this is Ian Court, and a wee trigger warning just to let you know the cuteness in this video may be fatal. Cool.
So this is Freeholders Wood in the heart of Wensleydale, in the middle of the Yorkshire Dales National Park. It's one of the really important woodland habitats we have here in the Dales, and this type of woodland is categorised as semi-natural ancient woodland. It's ancient because it's been here, as the name suggests, a long time. If you look back on all the historical maps that have been here, going back hundreds of years, you will see woodland that is actually on those maps. So we know that woodland has been in this location for a very, very long time. It's semi-natural because there's been a lot of management over the years. You can see here it's a coppice woodland. So this is where over time, these are hazels where basically the stems are taken, so large bits of wood like this will be taken out and used for, in Victorian times, going back a long time, they would have been used for various products, for firewood, for broom handles, for all those products that you would find around the house. This is pre-industrialisation, when they had to utilise the woods and, you know, make all the tools and all their equipment from scratch from what was around them. So they used to take out these hazels, so they used to chop the larger branches out, and that reinvigorates the tree. It makes it grow, and you can see here, once it's taken out, lots of new stems like this will spring up. And then the idea of coppicing is that you can utilise these different stem sizes depending on what you want. So the larger ones would be for firewood, and the smaller ones used for a whole range of different products. So whilst this wood has been here for a very long time, there's a lot of evidence that it's been managed as part of a coppice woodland, and this is partly why it's such an important woodland from a nature conservation perspective. So one of the most important areas of a wood for biodiversity is the woodland edge. That's where there's a lot of light coming in, there's a lot of plants, there's a lot of insects, there's a lot of birds that feed on those insects. So the woodland edge is the real key bit. So if you imagine in a woodland that's a mature woodland, it's got a closed canopy, that area of woodland edge is actually relatively small. The other key thing for the woodland is the ground flora. So you can see in freeholders, perfect time of year looking at this, we've got the wood anemones out, the bluebells are coming out. So these plants on the ground need light coming in. If you have a mature woodland that's got lots of leaf cover, there's very little light coming in, and therefore there's very few flowers actually on the ground. But in coppicing, where you manage the woodland and you create this patchwork area of open ground, there's lots of light coming in, which is really beneficial to the plants and also all the insects that thrive on those plants within the wood. And one of the species it used to have in Victorian times was the hazel dormouse. Now this is a natural component of woodlands right across the country that has unfortunately been lost over the last 100-150 years due to a lack of coppice management, a loss of woodland, and woodland becoming more isolated. So the dormouse is a species that used to be found here. We've got records going back to the 1850s, so we know that dormice were a species that were found in this wood many years ago. But because of these changes, unfortunately, they've died out across a lot of the country, and it's now a species that really is in decline, and there's a lot of conservation work being done by a whole range of organisations. So one of these measures that can be done is a reintroduction. So working with People's Trust for Endangered Species and Natural England, the National Park Authority organised and introduced dormice into this wood. So these were captive bred animals that were brought in, released into the wood, and we've been monitoring them every year since, and they're now thankfully still here. Numbers are relatively low, but they are still here, so the reintroduction has worked. So it's really important that without some of these species, it's like having a missing piece of the jigsaw, that when you look at it, you'll see these bits missing. So the idea of these reintroductions for things like dormouse is we've got now a complete picture of this wood and all the wildlife that it should support. And as dormice hibernate, they're one of the few animals in this country that do, they need to build up a lot of these fat reserves for the winter. So hazel crop is that ideal, nut. They'll feed on those, put on lots of weight before they go into hibernation in the winter. So one of the ways we monitor for the dormice is to look for the nests. So the dormice will build a small nest, like a large tennis ball, tightly woven grass with a little hole in the middle and a chamber, and that's where the females will go in and have their young. Naturally, they would make them in coppice stools like this within the stems, and they would be incredibly difficult to find. And if we would try to look for them, it'd be really intrusive, going in and causing a lot of disturbance. So one of the ways of monitoring dormice is to put these nest boxes up. So one thing you'll notice is, unlike bird nest boxes, they haven't got the hole in the front because they want the bird to fly in. We have a hole in the back so the dormouse can go up the trunk and enter that way. So we have these, a number of these. We have over 200 nest boxes in this wood that we're all mapped out, and we check once a month from May through to October. So we look at the dormice, we can age them, we can sex them, and that will give us a total for the numbers. It's really important to remember that dormice are very sensitive to disturbance and they're legally protected, so it would be an offence to disturb them. So all our staff and volunteers are all fully licensed, we're fully trained, and we do this as part of a coordinated monitoring programme that's done right across the UK range, or the British range of the dormice. We really encourage visitors to the wood to really, you can do your bit to really help the wildlife here. Keep to the footpaths, come and enjoy the woodland, but don't go out into the wood. And most importantly, don't look in any of the boxes. You know, this time of year they could have the nesting birds in, so you can really play your part by leaving these nest boxes nice and secure, nice and safe, not disturbed, so the wildlife can thrive within them.
Many thanks to Ian Court for that video. Oh, dormice. I just can't believe them. They're absolutely amazing.
How is something that cute? It's impossible.
It's a joke.
It really is.
You know, apparently when they do the dormice surveys in the winter when they're hibernating, when they pick them up out of their nest boxes, they stay asleep. So they're in that little round like bundle. It's just amazing. Maybe we should do the training.
That's cruel.
Yeah.
That is cruel.
But I thought it was so interesting in that video how he described the sort of edges of the woodland being their specific habitat and how that coppice management kind of supports the species. It's actually got a really fancy word, that kind of gradient between one habitat into another. It's called an ecotone, apparently. And these are really biodiverse habitats because there's so many different niches for species to evolve into, which is why we get some really interesting species like those wood anemones that we saw, and the dormice, of course.
Absolutely.
But also that there's nothing sort of going to waste from this project because the wood that's generated from coppicing, it's a really ancient craft, coppicing. So the wood can be used for fuel, but it can also be used in sort of artisanal crafting to make really nice fences and baskets. And these are skills that we're also losing from our cultures because not as many people do them. So this kind of conservation project is also giving back to the local community in that way and, you know, benefiting our culture as well as the wildlife, which I thought was really interesting.
Really is, and again it goes back to that point of our national parks being amazing places purely for wildlife, but also enabling these sort of reintroduction projects, these rewilding projects, to not just benefit the wildlife but the community and the people around them. What a great project. I think everybody's going to be going into the Dormice reintroduction project now.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're going to be getting a lot of applicants, I think. But now, it wouldn't be Skydancer Day if we didn't mention hen harriers. And here we have what can only be described as an elegant piece focused on the sheer beauty of this marvellous keystone species. And when talking about the sort of ecological importance of this species that kind of holds the web of life together on upland moorlands, we can kind of forget what a dashing species they are. And it's safe to say that this film captures perfectly the phantom of the moors, the grey ghost of the uplands, the Skydancer hen harriers. Enjoy.
Dance with me, my ghost in grey. Our end is close most every day. Blue-grey circles in the sky. The future's bleak for you and I. Show me your sky dancing skills with pure ballet. Pass the kill to the ringtail on the wing. Dance as winter turns to spring. They hunt me, trap me, shoot me down. Help me, hear me cry out loud. Hear the sound of distant guns. Something evil this way comes. Scorched earth now where once you flew. Grouse most mean there's less of you. They hide the bodies, hide the tags, deeply buried in peat hags. They can never hide the pattern. They hunt me, trap me, shoot me down. Help me, hear me cry out loud. Wall of death for Circus Cyanus. Holes with spring traps all around. Evil gunmen, they still await them, for the Skydancers are earthbound. Moorland Douglas and their sons are now known for their true worth. Burning camouflage or twigs, they try to hide their evil deeds. With bellies full of lead and pies, their heads are empty except for lies. But who are we to criticize this rich man's game of genocide? Genocide. Genocide. They hold me, trap me, shoot me down. They hold me, trap me, shoot me down. Help me, hear me cry out loud. Help me, hear me cry. Won't survive without your voice. Be the difference, be the choice. We may have wings, but we can't fly. We disappeared behind closed eyes.
Hen harriers.
What a
Absolutely
bird. What
Beautiful,
a bird.
beautiful birds. And that music actually made me feel quite sad in parts. It's quite sort of dramatic and emotional, isn't it? It's tough to see those birds sort of flying about, you know, being so majestic, and then knowing how they struggle in such a challenging environment. But then on the other hand, I was thinking about how, you know, someone's taken the time to write and compose music for them. So, you know, there's people on both sides who are fighting for their survival.
I couldn't agree more with that. You know, like you were saying, you've got that sort of harrowing tale of the hen harriers with the music, with the emotion, then tied with the beautiful Skydance. I mean, what a film. That was pretty spot on, that.
That's brilliant.
Now, as you can see, films and art are an amazing way to highlight the intense and infinite beauty of the natural world to inspire people to take an interest. And one way you can get involved, apart from the Young Writers Competition, is the Young Photographers Competition. And the Young Photographers Competition is a fantastic opportunity for young people to show off your talent and express your artistic flair for the outdoors. And this year it's being judged by UK-based wildlife photographer Richard Burchett. And you have to be between the ages of 5 and 16, and you must submit your entries by the 6th of July. And the winners will be announced on the 9th of August. And I can't wait to see all your fabulous entries.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing what everybody submits, and please do enter. It's, you know, you never know what's going to come from winning a competition. So next up we are hearing from Mark Thomas, who's the director of RSPB Investigations Team, and he's going to be telling us and our own Paul, all about the work that they do.
Hello, everyone. My name is Paul Samuels. I'm co-chair of Hen Harrier Action, and we've worked with the RSPB's investigation team for some years now on satellite tagging and other projects. And I'm delighted to be joined by Mark Thomas, UK's Head of Investigations, for an update. Welcome, Mark, and thank you for taking time out from your busy schedule to speak to us today. So, first of all, for the benefit of new Skydancer Day viewers, can you explain a bit about what the RSPB's investigation team does?
Hi, Paul. Good afternoon, everyone. So always a pleasure to speak to Hen Harrier Action. So I manage the UK team for the RSPB investigations, and we are a small team. And the idea of our team is to catch people killing birds of prey, to gather that evidence, pass that evidence to the police and the prosecuting authorities, and try and bring those criminals killing our birds of prey to justice.
Thank you. And how do you find out about suspected wildlife crimes that need to be investigated? Can the public play a part in helping with this?
Yeah, the public are definitely there as a big resource. So, you are our eyes and ears. You see things, you report things. Many of our best cases have come from tip-offs, from when someone has just seen something, they didn't like the look of it, they reported it to the police or the RSPB, and maybe we already knew about that location or the person involved. But that extra bit of intelligence is always helpful, and often it guides some of our field work out on the ground. So the way we operate, we have investigators. They will follow up reports of dead birds or suspicious happenings, and we will try and gather evidence. Often that might be using covert cameras to catch people in the act of killing or poisoning birds.
Okay. Now, I know there's been a lot of national coverage and public outcry about the covert filming footage that your team obtained of gamekeepers on a northern grouse moor. Can you tell us a bit about that? What's happened since?
This was broadcast by Channel 4 News last October. Lots of people saw that. I'm very limited as to what I can say because the facts are a person has been charged with an offence in connection with that footage, and that person appeared at court last week. They pleaded not guilty to 2 charges, and the case continues. So I can't really say anything more than that, but obviously it's a very significant investigation, and we welcome the fact that charges have been brought, and we will be assisting the police and the CPS in the continuation of that case.
One thing we learned from the film footage you obtained was that satellite tags act as a deterrent to wildlife criminals, and your team work hard each breeding season fitting satellite tags to hen harriers. Are you going to carry on fitting tags this year or even increase the numbers?
Yeah, tags are vital in both protecting harriers and also telling us when and where harriers die. So the mortality of the birds. And we have been extremely lucky due to sponsorship, like the sponsorship from Hen Harrier Action and some other bodies, that we've been able to fit increasing numbers of tags. We fit them to juvenile hen harriers about 5 days before the birds fledge. And the idea is then that they're fully grown and they fledge with the tag, and we can then follow the bird and the bird's progress. So what we've also done at the RSPB is our scientists have looked at all the data and written scientifically valid papers that have been peer reviewed, and those papers show us the scale of the illegal killing of hen harriers. So we are not going to stop fitting tags. They're a vital tool in conservation. They tell us lots of things about individual birds, and particularly about how the birds are dying and where those birds are dying.
Thanks to our generous supporters, it's not Hen Harrier Action's own money, we were able to fund 4 satellite tags. There was a bird in Scotland, one in Wales, and a couple in England. And you investigate their movements. Is there anything that you can tell us about these 4 tags and their birds?
Yeah, sure. Again, a huge thank you to your supporters for the appeal that you raised. You've done this for several years, and we absolutely are delighted with the response that you get to these appeals. It enables us to fit tags. It enables to track individual birds. So, in relation to the 4 birds which we fitted with tags most recently, at this time of year in May, we don't really publicise where the birds are for very obvious reasons. But what I would say, 3 of those 4 birds are doing very, very well. And unfortunately, one of them is not. And this is a bird which died a couple of months ago. It's subject to an ongoing police investigation. And the location where the bird died was on a driven grouse moor. So I think that's probably as much as I can actually say on that at the moment. It's subject to an ongoing investigation. But again, it shows the value, because without a tag, we would not know what those birds were doing or the fates that they have received.
So finally, I just wanted to ask you about the annual bird crime report that you and your team pulled together. Many of the cases are really shocking and heartbreaking. Can you foresee a time when wildlife crime and raptor persecution will be part of history?
Yeah, this is the absolute focus of my team. Every single day we try and do something that makes the situation for birds of prey better, be that investigating cases on the ground, gathering evidence, trying to change legislation, all sorts of different aspects to this. A day will come when birds of prey are no longer illegally killed. We absolutely believe and hope that that is the case. And we use as many methods as we possibly can to try and bring that to bear. I think the key thing here is to look at the progress that has been made. So Scotland, they now have licensing of driven grouse moors. It's been a bit of a bumpy ride, and there's some amendments to legislation that are probably going to come. But really, if you look at it, birds of prey in Scotland now are better protected than birds of prey in England. So the RSPB's campaign at the moment is to bring that same change to the grouse moors in England. There has to be the same legislation, the same level of protection. We acknowledge that other organisations and individual people will want to go further than licensing. They will want a ban of driven grouse shooting. I respect those views, the RSPB's views. However, we believe that licensing is the most likely thing that will happen. And we're pressing government continuously to try and make that happen. We believe if a licensing system is in place, then the people who are pulling the trigger and killing birds of prey, and the bosses and managers who in some cases are making that happen, they will stop and think, do they really want to lose their license and their ability to shoot on that land through carrying on or continuing killing birds of prey? So whilst the RSPB is completely neutral on the ethics of game bird shooting, we will stand up and we will scream about the injustice when amazing birds of prey are being illegally killed. This has to stop. The killing has to stop.
Well, as viewers will have seen earlier on in the programme, David Butterworth reminds us all that crime is a crime. And he and the Yorkshire Dales National Park Authority are going to do all they can to uphold the law. Thanks, Mark. It's been a really enjoyable and interesting conversation. And just like to, on behalf of Hen Harrier and all our supporters, like to thank you for the work you do, not just this interview, but all the work that goes on throughout the year to help protect our very valuable wildlife.
Thank you. We will continue to work on your behalf, everyone's behalf who treasures birds. As I say, the killing has to stop.
Let's hope so. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you to Mark Thomas there and our own lovely Paul for that really interesting interview, kind of surrounding the sort of realistics of actually investigating in these big open spaces the issues with satellite tags, criminal law, and it kind of gives you a sort of more of an insight into how it actually operates, I suppose, in a way that at a sort of ground level with shows like this, we've got the open conversations about persecution, but realistically with the actual investigation that is involved, as Mark highlighted there, it is still a long way to go, a real long way to go. But on a slightly lighter note, we do have some positive stats.
Yes, we do. Although the hen harriers are still kind of a quarter of what they should be at, according to how much of their suitable habitat they have, the stats are going up, which is brilliant. And we've had so many people today making this happen. So I want to thank all of our amazing guests again for all of their fascinating insights. For all of the people behind the camera for making this happen, for the beautiful Malham Cove to having us, to you George of course, and for everyone at home watching. It's been a pleasure to have you. So I hope you've enjoyed learning a bit more about the work being done to restore and protect habitats up here in the uplands. And if you want any more information about any of the organisations that we've featured or any of the links to more video content, you can find on our website and in the description below this video. Please continue to support our efforts, sign up to our newsletter, and even make a donation. So apparently we are fundraising as well for satellite tags for the RSPB to be able to monitor more of these birds going out into the wild. And you can even organise your own Hen Harrier Day in your community.
We certainly can, and thanks again to you, Lauren. Really enjoyed presenting this with you. It was a right laugh. We dipped a little bit in the middle with the technology, but it was a cracking show. And really, I hope you kind of leave today switching off YouTube with feeling a little bit more reassured and optimistic for the fate of our ecosystems and for the future of them in this part of the world, and also a kind of drive to support the rewilding and restoration projects that are helping to kind of nurse our wild places and stitch them back together into their former glory. And maybe, emphasis on maybe, one day we can kind of revel back in a few years' time and look at the positive change we've managed to achieve. Thanks very much for watching.
Thank you.
And we'll see you next year.
Bye.
Dance with me, my ghost in grey. Our end is close most every day. Blue-grey circles in the sky. The future's bleak for you and I. Show me your sky dancing skills with pure ballet. Past the kill to the ringtail on the wing. Dance as winter turns to spring. They hunt me, trap me, shoot